Hi, my name is Sarah Collins Stockton. I did my book review on For White Folks Who Teach in the Hood and the Rest of Y'all Too, Reality Pedagogy and Urban Education by Christopher Emden. So he focuses on this process and this context of reality pedagogy, which is basically a method on making sure that you're focusing on making the communal experiences that students have visible and creating a context within the classroom where the students have the freedom to teach the teacher about his or her own educational needs. And the teacher has the freedom to be a student also in that aspect. They can learn through their students about what their students need, going directly towards the source, which is a good way to do it, I think. It allows students basically to tell their own narratives and to show what they might need. So there's a lot of processes in which he does bring this up. For example, one that I found interesting was co-teaching, allowing students to, after going through a process of being in a co-gen, forming a relationship with other students in the class and forming a relationship with the teacher, and also the teacher returning those comments or those feedback issues that the students have with the teacher has to make it obvious that they're willing to change in order to help the student prosper. And so after forming that kind of relationship, Emden proposes that we allow students teach a lesson and pay attention to the examples they use, because it shows a lot about how they choose to connect to their fellow peers, and therefore how a teacher can connect to those same students. So that was an interesting thing. He also goes over this in different aspects, like I said, but basically it's about allowing oneself to be immersed in the culture of the student and to most importantly learn about the examples and teaching methods through the culture of the student from the student, like I said. He also talks about constructing classrooms around this urban culture through methods like hip-hop ciphers, urban church methods in delivering education and scripture, breaking through dense networks that students and teachers form. He talks about how teachers can form these dense networks, these tight networks with other teachers, and students can do the same thing with their peers, and it kind of feeds this barrier because it's hard. There's negative consequences because a lot of the times people aren't willing to hear information that goes outside of that way of thinking within their dense networks. So he talks about different ways in which you can break through those networks, and it's really about connecting with the students on their level. And so he talks about how the way that he first broke through one of those networks was actually playing basketball with the students. I don't know how I would personally do it. It's something that I will think about because I can't play basketball and I probably couldn't be in that space just because I don't know how to be in that space, but it would be something I'd be willing to learn about. So he talks about this, and he also talks about the way that, Pentecostal, he talked about the way that urban churches basically deliver scripture, how they have this call and response within the church, how people get passionate, people are engaged, people are shouting out, and a lot of the methods that we think would be wrong in the classroom, how that might pertain to urban youth because they're used to growing up in environments that are louder or, a little bit more loosely structured in terms of the way that a student should be sitting down and quiet. He speaks about how urban youth are taught to fight against their instincts because of the way that teachers from another culture other than theirs were taught. So basically, as a white woman, I was taught to sit quietly in class and take notes. And if I walked into an urban classroom and tried to teach that way, it could actually harm my students because that goes against their natural instincts, and how we have to use students' narrative to reconstruct the negative that is reflected on urban youth because of these cultural differences. So educators who insist on one way of doing it talk negatively about urban youth and therefore feed the cycle of urban youth failing in the school systems, which isn't right. So it's a great book. I recommend it, especially for prospective teachers. Thank you.